right? You don't think it's going to create a feedback loop?
No, as long as I turn my microphone off. So my microphone off will be off, but sound on. You turn your microphone on, but audio, like the audio down on that. That should be.
All right.
Big emphasis on
Good morning.
Yeah, that way they can see who's speaking. And then from that one, they can see the group. Yeah, man, I'm sorry to hear that you guys doing a little temporary shutdown. I understand.
I mean, it's
Expensive to operate this place. I mean,
this is very fortunate.
You said you're low.
Low.
I'm
always low.
Are you? Okay, well, you're like Randy too. Me too.
I mean, David, what's up? How are you, Fred? I'm good. How are you? Good. Morning. Hey.
Airbags. Yeah, they were just all my car.
What are the next days for
So next week we're doing an evening meeting at the Brandon for Christmas party. The 17th is all the others.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the January.
Backing up the Mueller investigation. Joe, my feeling is it'll take years for us to really unravel all the details of this story, not least all the things we don't yet know about the conduct of individuals, both in the White House and their dealings abroad. It's a work now for historians, I suspect, more than prosecutors.
All right, and NBC's Carol Lee, thank you. Expansive reporting on Michael Flynn and NBC.com and David Pages.
Hey, in there, what's your?
There's a big.
100% season first tree updates. She's actually showed it out today, hopefully, you know, stuff like so she's going to get out today. She's got they're going to she's going to stay to make sure.
Yesterday, meaning this wave is about to get much worse. How much worse? The director of the CDC warns that the next 3 months will be the most difficult time in the public health history of this nation. So, to be clear, the United States recorded deaths yesterday more than 3,000. And Japan has suffered a pandemic. Look at that. We did it in 1 day. So, faced with the worst health crisis in the history of the nation, what is the president doing? He's trying to overturn the election in public, literally trying to undermine democracy in public. A 46-minute word salad of lies about the election he lost. He is completely detached from both reality and liberty, and still in control of the nuclear codes for another 50-plus days. On top of that, he's doing it largely for money, to raise cash for a fund that he can use to fly around the country and throw parties at Mar-a-Lago. The former national security advisor, the one the president just pardoned, is now publicizing
handling this urgent moment of the pandemic? Oh, that and holding holiday parties that flood CDC guidelines as we report record deaths. Some party. CNN's Adrian brought us live in Chicago with the breaking news on the pandemic, this horrible milestone.
John, indeed another grim milestone for the U.S. The most deaths and hospitalizations yesterday since the start of the pandemic. Even though the prospect of a vaccine is right around the corner, experts warn the worst is still yet to come. Across the United States, the coronavirus pandemic passing devastating milestones this morning.
No way to sugarcoat it. It is the deadliest day that we have had.
The country recording the most deaths in one day since the pandemic began, and more than 100,000 people are in the hospital with the disease. The director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention warns that number will only increase, saying there could be close to 450,000 deaths by February.
So I actually believe they're going to be the most difficult time in the public health history of this nation, largely because of the stress that's going to put on our healthcare system.
Los Angeles County this week reporting its highest number of people in the hospital with the virus. And with new cases on the rise, the city's mayor enforcing a stricter, safer at-home order.
It's time to hunker down. It's time to cancel everything. And if it isn't essential, don't do it.
Health experts are bracing for an even higher number of new cases and hospitalization in the upcoming weeks when infections stemming from Thanksgiving gatherings surge. This pushing the CDC to again call for people to cancel travel plans for the winter holidays.
It's likely that unless really major efforts are to push harder with the public health measures, we could be facing the kind of circumstance that we really hope not to, where many hospitals just run out of capabilities to take care of all the sick patients.
According to Operation Warp Speed, the first shipments of Pfizer's vaccine will be delivered on December 15th, and Moderna's 1 week later on the 22nd. Both still need FDA approval. Federal officials say 40 million doses should be available by the end of December, and now for 20 million people to be vaccinated.
Between December and end of February, we will have potentially immunized 100 million people, which is really more or less the size of the significant at-risk population, the elderly, the healthcare workers, the first-line workers.
And once the vaccine is approved, it will still be months before Americans can receive that critical shot in the arm. So experts are warning and saying it is crucial for Americans to continue practicing the 3 W's. Wash your hands, wear a mask, and watch your distance, even months after the vaccine rolls out. John?
Adrian brought us in Chicago. Thanks so much. Just to state this one more time. The United States just recorded more deaths in one day than Japan has the entire pandemic. In total. That is literally unbelievable.
Good morning to everybody.
Good morning, Kelly. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. It's Kelly calling in.
Ravando lowered Foster Husmeyer. Cheney, Quinn, Littrell. Littrell, Foster, Husmeyer, Abraham. Good morning. Good morning. Lewis. I think we total out at, oh, okay. Well, in theory it was 21, but yeah. Geller, Person, Vale.
Good morning, Steve. Kelly here.
Lewis. Lewis.
Morning, everybody.
Abraham, Andrews.
Matthew, you need to put Matthew and Charlotte Foster on your name tag there.
Harlan has made it to where I can't change the name anymore.
Phoenix. He said Marlon made where you can't change the
That's funny and probably appropriate. I was told by the manager here that they might be able to keep doing that.
It's been about something. Hey, David, how are you?
Are we done? Well, you know what I'm but I've started to do that too. Yeah. Well, I don't even get it because I got a super small. That's like, oh, all the equipment.
I'm really having a hard time.
Well, it's an
Hey, Buster. I think we can do happy dollars from here. I don't see Bobby, so. Do you want to do happy dollars from the screen there?
Yeah, if it works, it works for me if it works for everybody else.
The sound's going to be hard, but everybody quiets down, so it should work.
Yeah, it won't be as loud in here. So.
Okay. We'll just need a collector.
Yeah, I'll walk around and collect it.
They don't have to decide out of legal, their equipment. Good.
So how can I see what the other things that
Oh, okay.
Let's see the list.
I did not. I certainly wasn't. Probably. Yeah. He was really helpful. Yeah. There's this thing called focus, right? There's this thing called they kept this thing on. And I don't make this bill, but I needed to, last Tuesday, and I just looked at the story. Actually, it's going to be a reset. It's going to be a reset. You guys, you know,
Wait a minute, where's the camera?
That's what I told her.
That's Gavin, it's Chip, Grandpappy, and there's Frank.
This is our crew this morning. It's kind of hard to hear them. They'll be up on the TV, but it's hard to hear them with everybody talking in
There's
here.
Brad. I'm calling Brad. I have a role for you.
A roll, like a roll and some butter?
Yeah. Oh, I didn't think that.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it's better. It's good.
I don't know about everybody else in the Zoom call, but I kind of feel like I'm eavesdropping on everybody.
There is a sense of that, isn't there, Matt?
Yes, there is.
Yeah, I agree. We don't seem to be part of the meeting at all.
Don't tell them we're here.
Okay.
Although for me, it's not that much different than being at a restaurant and walking through, honestly.
But they all have on pants. So.
I've forgotten what it was like to walk in a restaurant.
Buster, how do you know that?
Luckily, I get to eavesdrop on you guys.
They have them on.
Right.
And we were yelling at presidential leadership because they tried to politicize a pandemic.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back from Thanksgiving. Whose pants are a little tighter? So we're doing our hybrid thing again. We're trying to. So we're going to have part of our club members participate on screen. So our invocation is from Frank today. So he's going to lead us off with the prayer, holy test, and pledge.
Good morning, and I apologize for not being there out of an abundance of caution. May the thoughts of our hearts and the words of our mouth and the work of our hands and all that we do with our lives speak of truth, grace, and service as we seek to live in a way of gratitude. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible,
with
liberty
liberty and justice for all.
May the things that we think, say, and do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you.
Frank. Our Sergeant at Arms report.
Morning, everyone. Happy December. We have 19 members and a charter member who's joined us this morning. And who would like to introduce our charter member? Gail?
We have Don Ray. Thank you, Florida, much of the time when you came up for Thanksgiving and thought you joined us this morning.
Welcome.
Very nice. And then we'll meet our speaker in just a few minutes.
Okay. So that puts us at about, I guess, roughly 30 people.
Yeah, we've got 19 online. So
Tony was on Zoom and he's here.
Yeah.
Dr. Rolando. Technically, though not a guest, we have both COVID Satellite Club. One of the requirements to go to the red badge, blue badge in the Satellite Club is to come to one of these meetings. So I would like for y'all to please recognize Taylor.
So Rick is having eye surgery today. He is not able to attend, so y'all keep him in your thoughts and prayers. We do have 2 club anniversaries. Neither are present. It's Cooper Trotter and Ralph Jones. Both have 14-year anniversary yesterday. So that's quite a bit of years. So I'm going to call on Judy next to see if she has any update on our scholarship process.
I've reached out to all the high schools again this week, and they basically said, get ready because students are slow to react to things like this. So probably in January, we'll start getting some applications in. But Page High School said they've had numerous students reach out and ask for applications. So that's a good thing. So all the schools have been contacted, and I'm staying on top of it.
And the application deadline is
February 15th.
So we have a committee ready to go. As soon as we get them, we'll start through them. That's great. Matthew, you have any announcements on the bell ringing?
Morning, everyone. We have had a pretty good go at this bell ringing ordeal this go round. I think I haven't checked this morning. Someone signed up for a slot overnight, which could leave 1 spot left, or it could leave 2 spots left. We're doing great. If we could just fill those 2 spots, if they're still available, they don't have anybody in them, then we're good. We're good to go. And I can only speak with the past few years I've been doing this, but we've never had it fill up this quickly, and I'm very grateful for that. And it's just one less email you'll get from me per day to delete without reading. So I appreciate it.
Because they read all of them.
Yes.
Thank you, Matthew. Next, I'm going to call on Tony to talk about our Christmas party. And also, we're still trying to work out some logistics on the Toys for Tots thing. I'd say, and I can't volunteer us, but I plan on bringing stuff, right? So if people want to bring stuff, I'm sure if I have to, I'll gather it all up and deliver it. But I'm sure somebody will be willing to take care of that process of making sure. We've been unable to get the Marines to respond. I guess, right? So
yeah, their emails, their website still talks about some of the 2019 dates, which tells you a little bit about probably where they're focused.
Tony, you want to talk about Christmas party?
Yeah, hey everybody. Kelly's, good morning to you. We have a great evening set up out at Grandover. Kelly's been really gracious with a lot of things. It's going to be an awesome dinner. And so I just want to talk quickly about a couple logistics and some other things. We have about 45 Rotarians that are signed up at this point, and really, I think that we might have 1 or 2 more, but that's probably around the number that we'll end up with. It's a 4-course meal, so some great appetizers, salad, dinner, and dessert set up on that evening. If you want to make a night of it, Kelly's got an unbelievable rate for something out at Grandover. He's considered all y'all friends, no matter what y'all have sort of behaved like over the last year, and it's just $99 for a night, an overnight. So if anybody needs that link resent to book an overnight room, please let me know, and I'll be happy to send that out. And as well, if the weather's nice, he's got a great rate for golf, which I'm sure you can reach out to him to just ask about how to sort of logistically do that. On that evening, it'll operate very similarly to the way that we have for the in-person breakfast here. So we'll have a check-in table and everything. There will be bars that are there, but it'll be at table service. So once you come in and get checked in, just find a table. The tables will mostly be 4 tops there that are set pretty socially distant, and just find your way to a table, and a server will come around and connect with you. So if you're leaving your table or anything, just be sure to put your mask back on, just like we do here, and just focus on keeping everybody safe. Hope you all have a great time that evening. And yes, Toys for Tots, I'm happy to help coordinate getting those gifts out. So be sure to bring a toy, because that's a great thing, and still a great need, probably even more so this year, even though they've not really publicized it quite as much. So thank y'all.
Thank you, Tony. So obviously there's a huge need this year. I saw in the news unemployment's risen to over 7% in North Carolina. So there are plenty of families that could really use a boost and a helping hand for Christmas. It's unwrapped, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So bring an unwrapped gift if you plan on coming, or 2 or 3 or 10 if you want. You know, it's lots and lots of needs. So next I'm going to call on Buster. Buster, you want to talk about the past president's grants? Do you have the list of recipients?
Yeah, okay. I laugh at people when they do that, and now I'm one of them. Yes, this was really one of the easier years. I've been involved in this process for quite a few years, and there was a lot of emotion that went into a lot of them, but this was the easiest one we've ever done. Basically, everybody got what they wanted, and some got a little more. So that was just an effect of, you know, the number of grants we had and the amount of money. But so would we like to share who got a grant? Is that a good idea? Okay. All right. So Children of Vietnam got $1,000. Community Housing Solutions, $1,000. Enduring Gratitude, $1,000. Greensboro Cerebral Palsy, $1,000. Guatemala Stove Project, $900. Lionheart Academy, $1,000. North Carolina Pet Partners got $500. New Arrivals Institute got $1,000. Out of the Garden Project got $900. Reading Connections got $700, and the Salvation Army Boys and Girls Club got $1,000. So that's $10,000. The projects are all really great projects and will have a big impact in the community. So good job, everybody.
So this is a direct effect of Lisa's fundraiser, which, you know, was a virtual fundraiser. We pulled it off. It was mostly contributions from the club. And this is where your money is going to support the community through our club members. Remember, all of the grants are given through club members that participate in these charitable organizations. So I think it doubles the impact, in my opinion, right? So that's all I have for announcements. Buster, if you want to go ahead and do the happy dollars, if you can do it from there, I'll collect it.
Happy dollars, baby. I can see them.
Walt?
Yeah, I've got a good one.
Go ahead, Mark, or no?
Walt.
Go ahead, Walt.
It's Walt. Last Tuesday, I had a cardiac blade, a second one. I had one about 6 years ago. And for the last, I don't know, 3 months, been dealing with a pulse about 135 to 150 all the time, and irregular. So standing up out of the chair got me about half tired, climbed up 4 steps, put more in me out. So it's just a huge relief. I'm feeling a lot better. Not going to croak anytime real soon. Unless somebody runs over me. But at any rate, feeling good, feeling better. The other one is for my sister had COVID, was in the hospital for 3 days, and is out now. Doing better.
If people at the live meeting could go a little closer to the microphone, we're hoping Walt isn't saying that he died. That's everybody.
Walt didn't die. Walt's feeling a lot better.
Walt had an ablation for his heart condition, and it's worked, and he's been dealing with it for a while. He's feeling much better.
Good. Okay.
All right, this is Kim Dane, and I donated $5 because our son finally graduates from college on December 19th, and he will be off the college payroll.
Buster, I've got 2 real quick. First, there's been some conversation, and some folks may be even in a better position than I to pitch in, but in honor of our past district governor, Everett Paget, who died this week, we got an email about that, and there's been some other conversation too. For us charter members, like our friend Don Ray here and Governor Conrad, they can attest that Everett, at the time this club was started in the early 90s, was coincided with his term as district governor. And even after that, he was instrumental in helping kickstart this club encouraging us to understand Rotary speak and the different programs and the work of the foundation and Rotary International. He was just a real presence for us. He would come over to Greensboro to our early morning meetings, and I remember his good humor well. And I'm sure there are other stories to be told as well. That's in favor of Governor Paget. And the second, you've heard me talk about First Lieutenant Molly Hassel, USAF. She is this weekend off to her third deployment and first to Iraq, the other two being in Afghanistan. So we wish her Godspeed, and we'll be thinking about her during this holiday season as she's going for a third consecutive time. But we wish her well. But thank you so much.
We got an online one, Mark Luttrell.
Hey guys, good morning. I have a happy dollar over the last 2 weeks since I was at our last meeting. We had an exciting announcement. We have our fourth grandchild. His name is William Oliver Young IV, and we call him Oliver. But exciting news, first child for this daughter. So more to come probably.
All right.
I just dropped a large donation for a happy dollar. It's a 2-0 because I'm unofficially speaking for Out of the Garden Project, Children of Vietnam, and officially for Enduring Gratitude. I want to thank the club, one for the participation in the other two events that we've had benefiting Out of the Garden and Children of Vietnam, and Enduring Gratitude coming up in February. Just wanted to thank you guys. I mean, that's what we're about here, Rotary, is helping those that can't help themselves, and that's what those charities do. Oh, and it was Wilder's birthday, and he had a great birthday. He sends his regards.
Thank you, Chip.
Anybody else?
Frank.
Frank.
Yeah, I've got a happy dollar for the COVID vaccine. And I sincerely hope I don't have to push any of you out of the way to be first.
Send it through Venmo.
Okay, in the next life.
Don't worry, Buster's keeping tally. He's going to collect all these happy dollars when we come back, right, Buster?
Yeah, well, you got to go on Venmo and pay your happy dollars.
All right, a lot of people tell me that.
I'll chip one in for Frank. I think that's it, Buster.
All right. Well, let me just say that I have one. I just got back Tuesday night about midnight. Was in Portland, Oregon for 3 weeks, visiting my new grandson, whose name is Fox. So go figure. You don't get it. So anyway, he is the coolest little boy, and granddaddy, grandpappy got to spend a lot of quality time with little Fox, and he is just a delight. And what Grandpappy Lewis always told me is totally true, that grandchildren are the reward for not killing your children when they're teenagers.
Amen.
All right, I guess that was Grandpappy's message there. David. So David's going to introduce our speaker.
Yeah. My pleasure to introduce our speaker today. Matthew Armstrong teaches writing at Guilford College here in Greensboro. He's also written for Yes Weekly, Esquire Magazine, the Missouri Reserve, the Gettysburg Review, War Literature and the Arts, and numerous other publications. He's here today to talk to us about his first book, The Mysteries of Haditha, which came out this year. The reviews have been great. Paul Crenshaw, a five-time winner of the Best American Essay Prize, said The Mysteries of Haditha is as revealing as a bomb blasts, not only of war in the past, but of the lives we tell ourselves as human beings. The Mysteries of Haditha is a deadly combination of experience and expose written by one who has seen war firsthand and who works to uncover all its hidden secrets. Phil Kay, winner of the National Book Award, calls The Mysteries of Haditha a unique and fascinating book. Tracy Crow, author of On Point, a guide to writing military story, writes, in this unflinching narrative, Armstrong reveals the depth and breadth of his commitment to discovering firsthand what most Americans aren't willing to acknowledge about war, the existence of humanity within our enemy. Without further ado, introduce Matthew Armstrong, my friend.
Morning. Thank you guys so much for having me. The primary value that was spotlit in the invocation this morning, truth, something I'd like to talk about this morning, and I'd like to read a little bit from this book as well. But I'd first like to say, just sort of thinking off the cuff, that truth is a difficult concept, I think, not just to talk about, but also to execute. Because, at least in my experience, and as I'll talk about a little bit in the book, a lot of lies come out of love, which is to say our desire to serve others. One of the things I experienced on my path to Iraq. And talking about those kinds of lies, talking about a deep commitment to truth, can sometimes get you into trouble. David, when he mentioned this breakfast a few months ago, said, Matt, don't get political. What occurred to me after he said that was the whole reason that I set out to write this book, Mysteries of Haditha, was precisely that. I didn't want to get political. I was so angry about how politicized everything had gotten in this country. We're not talking about 2020. Y'all remember back in 2008. You guys remember when we used to actually talk about the wars in this country. I wanted to get around that politicized conversation. Now, I'm not sure how you can talk about these wars and avoid politics entirely. But what I tried to do by going over to Iraq back in 2008, something very basic. I wanted to see things for myself. Rather than have the Tucker Carlsons and Rachel Maddows of the world chew my meat for me and tell me what to think about Iraq, I wanted to sneak into the matrix and get a glimpse behind the curtain. This was not an easy feat, although it seemed to be at first. I come from Winchester, Virginia, a small town about an hour outside of DC and 10 minutes from the West Virginia line. Winchester is as purple as it gets. We went back and forth 74 times during the Civil War. Yeah. In other words, we have no idea who we are. There's a lot of useful confusion in Winchester. In any event, when I emailed Tom Bird, the editor of the Winchester Star, and told him I had a friend who was leading a SEAL team in Haditha, Iraq, and that I wanted to embed, he responded to me within 24 hours and said he wanted to sponsor the trip. Then something happened. Tom Bird went to see his doctor for a checkup before a trip to South America. Turns out his doctor was my father. And while Tom Bird was sitting on the table getting his vitals read, my dad said to him, you know, Tom, if anything happens to my son in Iraq, if he gets his head chopped off, your paper's legally liable. A day later, Tom Bird called me and told me the Winchester Star was withdrawing sponsorship. However, Bird did not tell me the truth about why he was pulling out. He lied. What he told me at the time was that the Winchester Star didn't want to sponsor a journalist without combat zone experience. When I countered by saying a journalist can't get combat zone experience without some paper taking a risk on him, or he's ever had combat zone experience, he simply said, I'm sorry, Matt. And so his lie led me to confront my intuition about my father, who then also lied to me. And of course, it was out of love. My mother was dying of cancer at the time. My grandfather was dying of cancer at the time. My dad didn't want to lose his son, his wife, and his father in the same season. But he was still alive. So on my journey to Haditha, not only did I have to wean myself off the steady diet of lies my government was feeding me every day about these wars, I also had to contend with the lies and myths right here in my own backyard. What do we mean when we say don't get political? I think what we generally mean is don't lie. Don't tell those dangerous half-truths that only acknowledge the Republican point of view or the Democrat point of view, or even more close to home, that point of view of mom, that point of view of dad. Those authority figures govern our lives. What I came to realize as I wrote this book was that this was not just a war story. This was a story about truth and the way the lies and myths that infuriate, sadden, and sustain us start right here at home. And that includes Greensboro and the elephant in the room of our city's history. So if it's okay with you, I'll read you a few pages from the beginning of the book and then take some questions and try to be as truthful as I can possibly be with you here this morning. And again, thank you guys, so many of you, for coming on this risky morning. All right, so this is the Mysteries of Haditha. It just came out this summer, and I'll just start right from the beginning of the book as I'm about to descend into Iraq. I met a woman on my way to Iraq. Just before I stepped onto the midnight plane to Baghdad, she asked me what should have been a simple question. Who do you work for? Her name was Moni Basu. She was a journalist. She had thick dark hair plus an intense demeanor, and she wore a helmet labeled Evil Media Chick. We were drinking coffee at a picnic table behind a beverage kiosk at the back of the Ali al-Salam base in Kuwait. Her traveling companion, a photographer named Curtis Compton, had caught shrapnel from an IED during a previous event. A moment before, Moni had given me, a rookie journalist, an important Arabic term, Mutr Saif. It means lies, bullshit, or summer rain, a thing that just doesn't happen in the desert. I told her I worked for a magazine called CQ. GQ? No, CQ. You write for Congressional Quarterly? The questions never stopped with Moni. She could smell the bullshit. Convergence Quarterly, I said. It's a new magazine. This will be our first issue. We're sponsored by North Carolina A&T. You work at North Carolina A&T? I nodded nervously. I'm white. A&T is a historically black college in Greensboro, North Carolina. Many people argue that the student protest movement of the 60s began at A&T when 4 courageous young men conducted a sit-in at a Woolworth's lunch counter on February 1st, 1960. This was the part of our history that we advertised to the world. Do you know who graduated from there, Moni asked. Jesse Jackson? Khalid Sheikh Mohammed? She said it like that. Like he is a lecturer in interdisciplinary writing for the past 3 years, but didn't know a thing about Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. This is the guy who masterminded the attacks on 9/11, Moni said. You don't know who Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is? Moni glanced at Curtis, who was applying a cloth to a lens with calm circular strokes. It was just beginning to dawn on me that I might be in way over my head. Like maybe I was a man my father was afraid I was, a rube, destined to die a ridiculous death in the coming days. My charred body hung from a bridge in some war-torn hamlet, men in loose-fitting garments cheering as my ashy corpse twisted in the wind. Or they'd put me in one of those orange jumpsuits and cut off my head, whoever they were. I took a long sip of my coffee. Surely whatever crush I had on Moni would not be reciprocated given my astounding ignorance about the war on terror. There I was, about to embed with Navy SEALs in Haditha, one of the most dangerous cities in Iraq, and I had no idea about the man who had started the very war I was trying to cover for a magazine that hadn't even released its first issue. I was 24 years old on 9/11. I did not question most of the official stories I heard emerging out of the early years of the war, and I certainly didn't think little Greensboro, North Carolina had anything to do with this grand geopolitical narrative. Yes, I was the guy who had traveled 7,000 miles to learn that the mastermind of 9/11 had been educated in my own backyard. Excuse me, I said. Rather than behave like a good journalist and question Moni relentlessly about KSM, I retreated to the bathroom to attend to suddenly struggling bowels. I stared at the graffiti left by the troops. Chuck Norris's tears cure cancer. Too bad he never cries. Here I sit, cheeks a-flexing, ready to unleash another Texan. Here I sit upon a crapper, ready to produce another rapper. Can't wait to go home. Have a nice war. They called my bus. I put on my Army surplus helmet and bulletproof vest, jotted down a few notes about the jokes in the toilet. I sat close to Moni as the bus filled up. I didn't want to lose her. I felt like I needed her, and I wasn't used to that feeling, that fear. I was the guy who loved to live alone, the last of my friends to marry. But I didn't want to be left alone in Iraq. On the drive to the plane, I made small talk with Moni about the record-breaking drought back home. It's so bad in Atlanta, she said, that I keep a bucket in my shower just so I can save enough water for my garden. We walked across the tarmac and up the ramp into the loud, bloated hull of the C-130 Hercules. It was Moni, Curtis, and I, plus 4 soldiers and 2 contractors. The C-130 is an exposed experience, a cabin stripped of padding and panel, the seats nothing more than net and pole, the lights a dim red, white, and blue, and floor studded with traction pads. After the plane took off, Moni fell asleep, and so did one of the soldiers. Another sat with his headphones blasting so loud it sounded like spit was coming out of his ears. I smelled grape Kool-Aid powder. I looked around at the seemingly calm faces, occasionally jostled by the turbulence. There was no turning back. For the past 6 months, I'd been obsessed with seeing the war for myself and escaping the media-saturated, excuse my French, mindfuck of left versus right, peace versus war, WMDs, beheadings, and 9/11 conspiracy theories. I wanted to see the thing for myself and escape the self-absorbed American vortex of screens and social media. And now that I was here, I couldn't stop thinking about how blind I'd been to the very place I was escaping. America, my own backyard. Other than KSM, what else had I missed? Was I about to get kidnapped and beheaded, my father dropping to his knees in our front yard with photographers flipping pictures all around him, just like the dad of Nick Berg, the famous decapitated contractor? And were contractors, these men snoozing all around me, were they the bad guys like everybody said? Was America evil? And why were our troops so infatuated with Chuck Norris, a man who at the time I thought of as nothing more than an aging third-tier actor from a bunch of forgettable martial arts movies? All the lights went out in the Hercules. The cabin of dark tunnel of jiggling multinational bodies as this massive airship began its spiral descent to Baghdad. The famous lights out, corkscrew, roller coaster, free fall approach being the military's way of evading RPGs and demonstrating to rookie journalists just how simultaneously colossal and agile America can be if it truly wants to keep itself a secret. That's the first movement of the book. And what happens after that is I finally get to Iraq. I finally get to Baghdad. But what was really interesting, and I'll just make this brief so we have a little time to actually have a conversation. What was very interesting was it took me, once I got into Baghdad, it took me a good week in my own bed as I moved toward Haditha and the mysteries that I would discover there. It took me a week to finally meet someone from Iraq. Before I left, my dad, after we went back and forth with some of the worst arguments of our life about the lie that he kept telling me, which is I had nothing to do with the Winchester Star withdrawing its sponsorship. And he finally did acknowledge that, and we finally started to reconcile. It was a really powerful experience. But he finally, just about a week before I went, said to me, you know, okay, if you're going to do this. You need to tell the story that nobody else is telling. You need to do something original over there. And he said, try to find their good guy. Try to talk about them. When we talk about these wars, all we ever talk about is ourselves. We talk about how many of our soldiers have died, how many of our people have experienced casualties. He said, that's important. But we've occupied and invaded another country. Some people say we shouldn't have. What about them? What's their story? Who's their good guy? Can you find that story? And it was, to me, this was a kind of seemingly simple but earth-shattering piece of advice my dad gave me, and it shaped my experience, the truths that I think I uncovered while I was over in Iraq. Instead of focusing my time on the Navy SEALs, who I was sort of in awe of, their leader was, their platoon leader was one of my best friends from high school. I was very much in awe of the SEAL mystique. But instead of thinking about that, I tried to think about the people that we'd occupied and try to tell their story. For my dad to give that wisdom after the lies of the initial conversation, it changed my life and it changed the shape of this book. So with that, I'll leave it open to questions. Thanks again for having me. Yeah.
So if the paper didn't sponsor you, who covered your costs, or how did you work that out?
Well, I had about $3,000 of credit left on my credit card at the time. And so I went all in. I had a friend at the time who had said to me, Matt, the greatest asset you have in your life is yourself. If you are willing to risk yourself, you can make anything happen. So I decided, you know what, I believe in this. I'm gonna go over there. I'm gonna write the best stories I can, and if I can't sell them when I get back, then I'm not worth my salt as a writer. So I went over there. I went into debt. I wrote the stories, and guess who bought them when I came back? The Winchester Star.
Yeah. How long were you there?
About 3 weeks. Yeah, I sort of I stretched out North Carolina's spring A&T spring break as much as I possibly could. Yeah.
You talked about your father's challenge to you to meet the people of Iraq, and what was that experience like?
It was profoundly and wonderfully disorienting. I'll tell you a brief story about that. The SEALs were training an Iraqi SWAT team in Haditha. And hello out there. And the leader of the SWAT team, his name was Captain Allah. And when I first heard about him, I was like, whoa, Captain God? I want to talk to that guy. And the leader of the SEAL team, he could tell that I really wanted to meet Iraqis, so he said, all right, yeah, you're going to probably want to meet this guy. He's fascinating. And he was the first Iraqi that I met. And what was initially striking about him, I came to really like it, was that he had a mullet. He had a very long, feathered mullet. I thought, man, here's the kind of guy Chuck Norris would really get along with. You know, he's sort of this road cop. And the leader of the SWAT team, he was very engaging. When I sat down for my first conversation with him, I couldn't help myself. I asked him, what's the story with the mullet? Because you don't often see mullets. And you know what we think about mullets in this country. You know, the business in the front, the party in the back, it usually suggests a particular kind of individual. So I had to ask this Iraqi guy, what's the story with the mullet? And he said, and when I say this, remember, I got a translator next to me as I'm having this conversation. I've got a Jordanian translator named Rami who's sitting between us. And as Captain Arad is just wildly gesticulating as he's answering this, I'm like, whoa, this is an involved answer. And when the translation comes back, it's essentially this. He says, if you have a haircut like this in Iraq, it means you're gay. But I am not gay, he said. I wear this because I do not care what people think. They will often hold you down and cut your hair if you have a haircut like this. But I do not care because I do not care what people think. I am not afraid to die. I have had, and he lists all of the people in his family who've been killed in the war. He lists all these uncles, all these cousins, including one who indeed had his head chopped off right on the soccer field of Haditha. He says, I am not afraid of death. They can come for me. I am ready to die. And I've never looked at a mullet the same way since. Yeah, there's a lot about Captain Allah in the book. He was a fascinating man. And luckily, he's still alive to this day. Yeah.
How do you think this experience, this Believe Me experience, changed you?
Oh boy, in so many ways that I had to write a book. I would say one of the ways, sort of speaking to what I mentioned at the beginning, was I went into that war kind of politicized. I saw myself, I'll just say it in a second, but just give you a brief backstory on the very thing David told me not to talk about. I grew up as a young Republican. Then I became a Democrat. And then I went to Iraq. And I think it freed my mind. It freed my mind from those politicized tracks. And I don't think anybody's ever fully free of those. I think if we've got our radio and our TV on every day, it's always coming in. Those paid corporate sponsors who are trying to put us in one box or another. But seeing war and seeing behind the curtain of the way it operates, seeing American foreign policy abroad, being right there at the spearhead of that policy has changed the way I've seen our politics, to the point that I don't think I'll ever look at those two parties the same way again. Because one thing I've noticed, and maybe you guys have noticed it too this year, as we're starting to have this conversation about withdrawing finally from Iraq and Afghanistan, is that this is the one conversation America doesn't know how to have. We do not know how to talk about foreign policy. Did you guys notice this in the presidential debates this year? How many times did this come up? Zero. The one person in the entire field who tried to talk about foreign policy, Tulsi Gabbard, well, they destroyed her. I'd say this is the elephant in America's living room. We don't know how to talk about our foreign wars. It's really useful to have some insight into how it works. Yeah.
So even a training mission in Afghanistan and Haditha had to carry with a heck of a lot of risk. What was the most hair-raising thing that happened to you while you were there?
Yeah. Once I got to Haditha and started encountering Iraqis, I kind of just wanted to see more and more and more. And in spite of the SEALs having me on their sort of plotted, embedded tour, they wanted to take me on a public relations tour. They wanted to show me their victories, and I wanted to see those. I wanted to report on the good news that I could report back to the Winchester Star, because you guys know small town newspapers. They don't want to hear bad news. I wanted to give as good of a spin as I possibly could. But that started to clash with some of the things I encountered as I did start to actually talk to the Iraqis. And I would say the most hair-raising thing that I encountered was right close to the end of my embed. The SEAL team said, All right, you want to go out into the desert? You want to go looking for Al-Qaeda? We'll go do it. So we took a convoy into the Al Jazeera Desert, which is this large swath of desert behind the Haditha Dam, which flows into the Euphrates River. And we went out there, and for several hours, we're just going to house after house, not kicking down doors, as they say, but knocking very loudly on doors, looking for ordnance, looking for weapons, looking for what they called NAIs, named areas of interest, and people of interest. And as we're making our way through the desert, not finding much here and there, we wind our way into this wide open expanse. And we get our Humvee caught in a wadi, which is this sort of snotty mud that happens when a pond basically disappears, but its moisture is still present just beneath the surface in the desert, almost like quicksand. The Humvee gets caught there right in front of a house that we did not know about. And as we're trying to get the Humvee out of the sand, the people from the house come out with guns drawn. And we start drawing our guns. I say we, I mean they. I'm down there going back and forth between taking pictures and helping them shovel. You know, I'm like, is this treacherous, me taking this picture? Ah, let me go shovel. Wait, this is a good picture. You know, it was very sort of hair-raising. I thought we were about to die. I thought we were about to have a real moment of old school combat as the guns got drawn. What was beautiful to see in that moment, as these two young shepherd boys came over the horizon with their sheep behind them, was that as we finally started talking to the kids and we started talking with the guys who had the Toyota trucks and the guns drawn, we found out that they were distant family members of Captain Allah, the guy with the mullet. And because we worked with him, because we were employing him, they trusted us. And we ended up having a good conversation. It was scary. Thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So I spent a year after you. I spent the summer there. I spent 4 months.
Really?
So spring and summer, and brought back a lot of memories. To I haven't talked about it a bunch, but I would like to read your book. So do you have any books available?
I do. I brought a few books.
Yeah, I'd like to have one. So thank you for coming and speaking to our club, and thank you for everybody.
Thank you.
The bell's over there. So.
It's Stubborn, Amazon, Sunrise Books in High Point,
Sunrise Books?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And of course, all the places online, like Borders.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely.
Sir.